Hello everybody, welcome to the stream. It's been a while. It's been a long while. I'm sorry, I haven't streamed in ages. But now I'm back. And we're gonna do a podcast tonight. Sorry for the lighting. I don't know if you can notice, but the lighting is a bit, maybe you don't notice because of the new camera and you're not used to that, maybe, but like the lighting's a bit fucked because I had a bulb on one of my lamps broke and I haven't had time to organize a new one. I've just been completely engulfed in work. Big reason is the Twitter files, which I've been studying and following and writing about, and which is of course what we're going to talk about tonight. I'm going to of course record an episode of The Private Citizen. It's going to be episode 140. And we're going to talk about the Twitter files, of course, because that's a very important topic. Hope you all are doing well. Hope you're having a good 2023 and all things are good on your end. I'm doing well. I'm having a good time. I'm doing a lot of work, but I'm also taking time off. You know, I'm not so much to play video games. I haven't played a video game in a while, but I'm doing some exercise. I haven't looked at my chat. I don't know how this works anymore. Indie Gaming, how are you doing? What's the new camera? This is an Elgato face cam, which is, I don't know if this camera has enough of reach, which is suspended on like a on like an arm, because I wanted to have my monitor a bit further away. So and I kind of needed, and now I can't. Now this is all broken. Now I have to reset this camera back up. How was that? What was this? How was this set up? That, I guess. So what did I use before? I used that camera, which is a Logitech something, a good Logitech webcam. Like that was the top streaming webcam like 6-7 years ago. But the main thing was that was always on my screen, and I thought I need something I can mount on like this thing that's closer to my face, which I prefer. I decided to get that camera because it's very, you can do some very nice manual settings of the white balance and everything. C920, let me see, Logitech C920. Yes, exactly. And I had an old Microsoft camera I used before that, which I've donated to the wife to do like some science Zoom calls. So I'm very happy with this camera. I need some professional lighting, which is like the next project. I've seen Indie Gaming, I've seen you I think on Twitter post about your foam stuff. I can't do that. The wife's gonna kill me. But I don't have foam. But I do have the Rocinante over my desk. Which is kind of cool, I think. You've done lights. You're becoming a professional YouTuber, I think. It's just that's what's going on, right? Just don't swear, right? They don't like that. They don't like swearing anymore, which is why this fucking thing is gonna be completely delisted of YouTube, but that's just the way it goes. Anyway, hope you're doing well. Looks I did Rocinante. I'm spent a lot of money on that on a Kickstarter, and I'm quite happy with it. It's kind of, I don't know. I look up and I feel happy. I like the look of this. I guy. I enjoy this very much. It's not mounted perfectly. It's not like, it's a bit. I have to work on it. One of the reasons this is a problem is also I'm not using this is not a professional desk. I had a glass desk, which was kind of getting too unwieldy and was a bit too small. And then I used this so when my wife was living in another flat because she moved to Hamburg, this was her kitchen table. So it's like a cheap IKEA kitchen table, which we varnished, and I'm using that, which is suboptimal because kitchen tables have this living room tables, which is also they have this like thing under the table, whatever. It's like this wooden thing, and this is like my legs. It's not optimal, and it's not optimal for mounting shit, but it's this is how it goes. Especially for webcams. Yeah, that's what I wanted, right? I did not want. I have DSLRs, but they're not really. They get hot and they're not. I don't know. I want to stick with the webcam. Keep it simple. It has a good sensor for webcam and quite a good lens. And what I really enjoy, it has this cap, so you can just put a cap on it, and then the fucking NSA can't spy on you. At least not that way. This has a downside, by the way, because today I spent like 5 minutes trying to figure out why the camera wasn't working, even though the light was on. Of course, the cap was off, but it's dark, and that's dark, and the light's behind it, and I couldn't see the cap. So I'm learning that. Anyway, let's start this podcast. Let's get into some content. Yeah, there's always something. Let's get into some content. I should turn my phone off. That's the first thing we're gonna do. And then we're going to talk about Twitter files, of course. Oh, first of all, we're going to do some do a quick test recording here. Just because I'm paranoid. Yep. That seems to work. Test 1, 2, 3. Boom. Yep. That seems to work. Right. Let's do this then. I haven't done this live in ages. Hello, Astral. Long time no stream indeed. I haven't done this in a long time. And it was about time to get back to it. I had to, I wanted to do the first podcast of the year already, but my audio, I migrated away from VoiceMeet. Actually, that reminds me, I can probably delete this off this. I don't need that anymore. So I had to rechange some audio stuff. I hope you can hear everything. I hope that's all okay. Usual podcast ground rules, of course, apply. But let's get into this stuff. Let's see if I can still manage to record a podcast. Right? Here we go. You're listening to The Private Citizen. Sybil. Well, a Sybil podcast. Jesus. Take 2. You're listening to The Private Citizen, a civil liberties podcast. This is episode 140 for Wednesday, the 11th of January, 2023. The Twitter Files, Part 3. Hello everybody, my name is Fab. I'm coming to you live from the Fab Industry Studios in Düsseldorf in Germany. Yes, live. I'm recording this live on Twitch once again. How are you doing? Happy to have you here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you're watching this live on YouTube, I'm back into the flow of things. New year, but changed the podcast website. Looks a bit different. I changed some things, but now I'm back. I'm back into the flow of things. I hope. And today we're gonna talk more about the Twitter files. And before I get into all of that, of course, if you go to the website privatecitizen.press, you will find the show notes, which are as fastidious as I can make them. I try to put everything in there, so you can follow along. There's links in there because this podcast is all about doing your own research, thinking about things for yourself. I mean, thinking about the things I talk about for yourself is a requirement. Doing your own research isn't, because that's why I'm doing the show. But if you want to, you can, because I don't want you to just take my word for it. Because the whole idea of the show is about you, being skeptical. Everybody being skeptical. Me being skeptical, but that also means you should be skeptical towards me. Right. Of course, there's links to the YouTube playlist. If you listen to this as a podcast and you would like to see my face while I do this, I'm a podcast guy. I kind of don't understand why people want that in their podcast. I understand Twitch streams when you're gaming and whatever, but some people just want to see my face. I do understand how some of you just at least once you want to see somebody who you're listening to. It just gives it more of a personal touch and a bit more of a better relationship, more trust. So if you want to do that, privatecitizen.press, there's a link to the to the Twitch channel, so you can watch live streams when they're going on, but also to the YouTube playlist where I upload all of these videos after the fact. But now, without further ado, let's get into before we get into the topic of the show, which is the Twitter files, I do want to talk a little bit about, what stuff I've talked about before and what my plans are on this topic. So what I mean by that is that, of course, I did 2 episodes on the Twitter files last year, episode 135 and episode 136. Now, these are numbered in parts. These are not the same parts that the journalists that cover the Twitter files use. They are my episode. These are my episode numbers, right? And I reorder this stuff, of course, to make it more accessible and more logical. Because these are several journalists and they cover different things, and I kind of want to make it, a bit more accessible. So I would recommend, if you have to listen to these first 2 episodes, that you pause the podcast here and listen to those episodes beforehand. But of course you don't have to. So I'm going to quickly paraphrase what I talked about. So in the first episode, I discussed what the Twitter files are, right? How the story broke, who the journalists are that are working on it. And then I discussed how shadow banning worked on Twitter, like what they call visibility filtering, which is one of the things that came out of the Twitter files and one of the things that was most important to me, because I think I am affected by it, or was affected by it. I think I still am. I'm still waiting for Elon to give me that tool. But anyway, you can listen to that, and that explains kind of the basics of the story. That's episode 135, and then in episode 136, I talked about the Hunter Biden laptop story. I first explained a little bit what that is, in case you didn't remember or didn't pay attention when this thing happened. Or in case you just read the mainstream media and you don't have the full story. And then I explained how basically the FBI first got into this business of monitoring and censoring people on Twitter, how that worked, and also how they influenced executives at social networks and also of press outlets, how they kind of biased them towards or against the Hunter Biden story. How the whole suppression of that story came about. And then at the end of that episode, I also did a short, well, not that short, side foray into an example of a larger phenomenon in what I call, I call the mainstream press or mainstream media, just to as a shorthand. It's kind of like become a derogatory term. We have a better term in German that's more applicable, but that I can't really use because English people don't know it. But the German term is Leitmedien, which is more of a it kind of means leading media. It's kind of the outlets that TLDR are very influential and all the other journalists copy, right? Kind of like if Der Spiegel or Die Zeit or Tagesschau says something, then the other journalists will generally assume they did their research and they can be relied upon. That the media is leading the conversation, the Leitmedien, and that media, not only in Germany but also in the US, almost discredited the Twitter files, and I talked a little bit about that. Now, today, this is the third episode on the Twitter files. We're going to talk a little bit more high level, a little bit meta about this whole thing, about what I feel and other people have observed is like the societal impact of these whole revelations. And then I'm going to also pick out one more specific thing that we learned from the Twitter files, which is the US military, the Pentagon, actually using, having Twitter accounts to spread propaganda, specific government military propaganda, US propaganda, and how that kind of, it wasn't many accounts and it wasn't such a big thing, but it very clearly highlights Twitter's bias and like the hypocrisy, because they've always said they were fighting very hard against misinformation, which, it's all well and good if it's Russian or Chinese misinformation, but if it's US misinformation, because Twitter is a US company, that is okay. And I object to that very much. Not because I'm not American, generally just as a journalist, I fucking hate propaganda. And it would be the same thing. I am as opposed to German government propaganda. I don't like government propaganda at all. I mean, I don't like propaganda, period. I don't like public relations, which is, propaganda largely originating from companies. I don't like that. And I don't like when governments do it either. So when a company says publicly that they're fighting, especially state-sponsored misinformation, and then they just exempt a government, it don't really matter to me if it's like their government, really. If they exempt a government, then that is hypocrisy, and that's like one of the most, I abhor this. I don't know if I've been raised that way, but I've always been that way. Like, I've been raised in a way, or I grew up in a way where I don't know, I haven't been raised that way. I think this is something that I've, through reading, acquired. I generally assume the worst in people. It's kind of like a John Hobbes kind of philosophy, right? I kind of assume, homini lupus est, or whatever it is. People are wolves among each other. I assume the worst in people, but I generally don't mind, right? So I don't, if somebody lies, I just it's something, to me, it's something that happens. I'm not like overly shocked. To me that this is not a moral thing. Like I assume everybody does it. It happens. There are good reasons, for example, for lying. It's just the thing humans do. And I will not be like, I don't begrudge somebody this for a long time. But what I really, really, really don't like, if somebody acts in a certain way, or somebody objects to somebody acting in a certain way and then does the same thing, like basic hypocrisy. I just don't like, I abhor this. And governments do this quite often, but also companies, and in this case Twitter. So I'm going to talk about this because this is just a small example, and it's maybe not that important in the grand scheme of things. But, at the end of the day, this is my podcast. This is covering stuff that I personally find interesting or that wind me up or that irk me. And this is something that irks me a lot. And it also shows like that kind of reflects upon a company and upon the people that run this company. And it kind of shows that you can't take them at their word at all. So then we're going to do that today. And then I'm planning 2 more episodes on the Twitter Files right now. I mean, I don't know what Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss and all these other people have lined up. I don't know what's coming out. So I'm guessing there might be more episodes, but this is the ones I can plan. And the next part's not going to be the next episode, I think, because I have a different topic in mind, but maybe the one after that, I don't know. So I plan 2 more episodes. IndieGamiacs, who's, this is one of the good things about doing this on Twitch again, live feedback. IndieGamiacs in chat says, I've developed the view over the years that people are useless until I can work out otherwise. Yeah, I think it's that's just a very mature, like it is. One of my favorite YouTubers, Held der Stein, is a German YouTuber. Calls this, in German, but he calls this expectation management. He says it's very important. He says one of his philosophies is that one of the most important things to live a happy life is expectation management. And, I always used to call this, there's this saying, hope for the best, but expect the worst, which is something I think Garak, I noticed, recently says in the Deep Space Nine episode as well. He always hopes for the best, but experiences taught him that he usually should expect the worst from people. I think it's a very healthy attitude. And it's okay if you get pleasantly surprised by people who are not that way. And that doesn't mean I just hate all people. It just means that I have a certain expectation. And then generally I really, I really like people that I get to know and that reinforce a view that they're very different. And I'm very loyal to these people, but there's just very few people in my life that get to that level. Usually people tend to disappoint me sooner or later. Or I'm old, says IndieGaming. Yeah, it's gray. It's all this gray in my beard. I'm old too. This is what happens. This experience. But anyway, so I'm planning 2 more episodes. So part 4 of the Twitter Files. I want to deal with the pandemic. There have been some revelations about what Twitter did, like how they censored dissidents and contrarian opinions, and basically just inconvenient facts. So like both governments, both the Trump and the Biden government, went and had Twitter delete accounts and tweets of things that they just didn't like. Loudly under misinformation, under that label. Which is bullshit, because these things we have examples from the Twitter Files of tweets that are factually correct and were still deleted. And then there's also a story about a Pfizer executive who had Twitter delete things factually, as far as we know, factually correct things, certainly things based on peer-reviewed papers that were highly regarded among people who knew what they were saying, but they were just saying things that were inconvenient to Pfizer because they were producing vaccines. And I want to really talk about that. So I'm going to do a whole episode about that, about the pandemic. We're going to revisit that topic. And then part 5, my 5th episode on the Twitter Files, I want to look at the different, so aside from the FBI, the different government branches that made requests for censorship, the NSA. Today we're going to talk about the Pentagon, but the State Department, all these different local police forces, all these different agencies, and what role the FBI played, because as they called themselves, as this our favorite FBI agent Elvis, said. The FBI is kind of the belly button of the government in this respect, and what role the FBI played. And then I also want to look a little bit, or just at least mention all the other companies aside from Twitter, all the other tech companies that were involved and presumably are still involved, that we just don't know so much because they weren't bought by billionaires who don't give a fuck and just, like, I don't know. I was thinking about this today. I've been reading and writing and doing a lot of work on the Twitter files in the last 2 days. And it kind of occurred to me that, like, I don't like Elon Musk. I've been on the record. I really don't like. I don't like billionaires in general. Most of them. I think all of them. I just don't think people should have that much money. But okay. But I think he's the first, like, billionaire whistleblower. He's certainly, the first profile guy who's became owner of a company and then, like, gave outside people a look into internal files of that company. That usually don't happen. Like, that usually don't happen. I can't talk my English is leaving me. that usually don't happen, Jeremiah. Oh, I don't know what's going on. Generally, this kind of thing doesn't happen. Usually, like, even if people, like, buy a company kind of in a contrarian way and they want to change the way it operates, they usually don't, like, spill secret files, right? Usually not a thing that happens. But yeah, I don't know. It's if you know of another instance that I'm missing right now, privatecitizen.press, please go there and go to contact at the top, or go to the producer feedback section in the show notes for this episode or any other episode, and contact me and let me know, because that might be actually an interesting topic. Anyway, so these are the other 2 episodes I have planned. So just so you have an overview, what we've talked about before and what is planned based on what I know about the Twitter files today. This might change, but that is the plan right now. And let's get into the topic at hand. Let's talk about let's do my 3rd episode on the Twitter files here. So the first thing I want to do is a little bit of a meta overview, a high-level overview of what this whole thing has done. And this was crystallized in, like, my mind by something that I read on Christmas Eve that Matt Taibbi posted on a Substack. So Matt Taibbi is one of the main journalists that has access to these files, the first one to publish a story based on this. A guy that I've kind of come to like he was, like, reporting on Wall Street, a unashamed leftist, we are not talking like today's people who think they're leftists. We're talking like actual fucking, like, I think he actually identified as a Marxist at some point. A guy used to live in Russia in the 90s, did some reporting there. It's like kind of like really also left field kind of guy, pun intended, kind of always a big fan of Hunter S. Thompson, that kind of reporting. But, he kind of, I kind of liked him, and I've talked about him before. But he's like one of the main guys here. And on Christmas Eve, he wrote kind of a personal reflection about this whole story, what he thinks about it. And I just want to read out some of the stuff he wrote, because this kind of encapsulates the whole story for me. So Matt Taibbi writes, sometime in the last decade, many people, I was one, and I would count myself in this group, began to feel robbed of their sense of normalcy by something we couldn't quite define. Increasingly glued to our phones, we saw that the version of the world that was spat out at us from them seemed distorted. And I've been in this club because I've been, like, very active on Twitter for a very long time now. The public's reaction to various news events seemed off kilter, being either way too intense, not intense enough, or simply unbelievable. You'd read that seemingly everyone in the world was in agreement that a certain thing was true, except it seemed ridiculous to you, which put you in an awkward place with friends, family, others. Should you say something? Are you the crazy one? And I've certainly felt this. I felt this with lots of acquaintances on the internet, especially during the pandemic, who kind of, kind of cut contact with me without ever telling me why. And in some respects, in some instances, I considered them very good friends. But, I kind of stopped hearing from them, which was kind of weird. But I kind of guess I know why. I am in a very lucky position that my personal life, I have, very few friends, but the friends I have are very good friends. And certainly my wife, who is not only my wife and the love of my life, but also the best friend I ever had. And she's not somebody who would, I'm a controversial guy. I have controversial opinions. He knows this, and she, she's dealt with this for the last 21 years almost. And she's not somebody who would, as Matt Taibbi says, that it's not going to put me in an awkward place with her. We agree on a lot of things. We don't agree on some things, and I think she thinks I'm crazy on some respects, but she would never, she just respects we respect each other, right? We respect our opinions. And my parents, who I've, had some disagreements with, but not only during the pandemic but also in the past. They're politically, we've diverged. I've diverged from how they raised me a little bit, and I think that's just normal. But we can always talk about this, and we have a very good relationship. So I'm not in this situation where really my friends and family, I'm in an awkward situation. But I know what he means based on just people I know a little less well, right? And they're not in my close circle. So, and I've talked to other people in the same situation as me or like Matt Taibbi, who just interpreted things differently, and they voiced this to their friends and family, and have been kind of put in the doghouse and been called crazy. So I definitely know what he's talking about. Anyway, Matt Taibbi, goes on. Should I say something? Are you the crazy one? My show notes just went away because my local development server just died, and now I have to scroll back to where I was. Sorry about that. Should you say something? Are you the crazy one? I can't have been the only person to have struggled psychologically during this time. I personally haven't, but I'm very sad at myself, and I can just kind of, survive. As long as I have my wife, and I just don't need anybody. So I'm also not somebody predisposed to psychological problems, luckily. But yeah, I know, I understand how somebody who would be in a different situation could actually be very impacted by this. So I understand where he's coming from. I can't have been the only person who struggled psychologically during this time. This is why these Twitter files have been such a balm. This is the reality they stole from us. It's repulsive, horrifying, and dystopian, a gruesome history of a world run by anti-people. But, I think he's a bit more idealistic, probably because he's comes from a kind of a leftist background than me. I always assumed the world was like this, so it's not as bad for me, but, I know where he's coming from. A gruesome history of a world run by anti-people, but I'll take it any day over the vile and insulting facsimile of truth they've been selling. Personally, once I saw that these lurid files could be used as a roadmap back to something like reality, I wasn't sure until this week. I relaxed for the first time in probably 7 or 8 years. Something tells me the coming year is going to be a better one. And I completely, I'm in a different position than Matt Taibbi, but I feel with him because I kind of felt like this as well. I'm not in a psychologically vulnerable position, really. And I'm a very strong-minded individual, so I kind of, it'll take a lot before I go am I the crazy one? I'm pretty sure that I wasn't the crazy one, right? I'm pretty sure that, the way I saw the pandemic and, January 6th and the Hunter Biden story and Russiagate and the Hillary Clinton email thing. How I saw all of these things was based in like, it wasn't a knee-jerk reaction. I was thinking, I'm a guy who thinks a lot about these things. This is why I'm passionate about this, and I do podcasts in like my free time. Well, not so much now anymore because it's kind of my job now, but like, for a long time did this in my free time, for many years, produce free content because I'm passionate about this. I think about these things a lot. I was like, I'm not the crazy one. I've analyzed these things, and I'm analyzing them based on like moral scaffoldings and like ways of analyzing things that I've built over the years, that I got taught by journalists, and that I've read in books, and that I've learned from my professors at the university. This is how you look at things in a scientific way. This is how you do skeptical thinking. And I was like, I'm not pulling this out of my ass. It's not a knee-jerk reaction, right? Especially when Trump started to be involved, because I fucking just like, that is not like my political position at all. I've never liked Trump. It's the same with Elon Musk, where I'm like, I just fucking hate the guy. But when you're then in a situation where you're like, you don't like the guy, so you're not predisposed to his viewpoint at all. And then when you get to that viewpoint and everybody's against you, you're like, yeah, but I'm not there because of my biases, right? I'm not there because I'm a Republican or I'm a Trump supporter. I am there because I've analyzed the situation, and this is like the logical view, and because of my skeptical view, because I talked about how I think like people generally like self-serving and cynical, and also like the public is dumb and can be like cheap, which is something I've learned from studying politics and history. I'm not somebody who goes like, I think a lot of people out there, and I mean, this is just how you're trained to be and how you think when you have a job and you have a life and you have children, right? Then you're just like, you're trained to like, oh yeah, this is like the press is saying this, and a lot of people are saying this. It's got to be right. And I've never been that way, right? I've never assumed just because some well-regarded source, whatever it is, the CDC, the German government, the Robert Koch Institute, Der Spiegel, the Washington Post, or because a lot of people are saying something, 98% of scientists say this, it's true, right? I've never subscribed to this. Like for me, I like to think things through. I like to look at the facts. I like to look at, or as close as you can get to it, like at the primary sources, right? When I see a news article, I click through to the sources, or largely most journalists don't give me links, so I have to research the sources, but I will do that. It's also kind of my job. So I go into the details and I look at it myself, and I go like, this is something we're going to get to in a bit, but like this whole thing started with the Hillary Clinton email thing, right? And then we got to the Trump, the Russiagate thing. And we had this narrative where I was sitting there. I didn't like Trump, but we had this narrative that kind of assumed that Trump was influenced by the Russians, specifically Vladimir Putin. And everybody was just accepting this. And the news and Twitter and social media, so the stuff that Taibbi talks about, was just assuming that this was logical. And I was thinking about it, like, this is not logical. Like, why would Donald Trump be a convenient like asset for Vladimir Putin, right? Leaving aside the fact that if you claim something like this is a very serious accusation that the president of the United States is basically a puppet of a foreign government. Like, if you wrote a news story like that and you're the New York Times or whoever, you have to provide me, the critical reader, with some fucking evidence. There has to be some evidence. You just can't go, well, it's obvious. Or like some intelligence sources that we are not naming say this. Like, that's not going to fly. So I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And the more time I spent, like, in hindsight, it's obvious. If you look at the timeline, the Russians invaded Ukraine in in 2014, right? That's when the war started. That is when the war actually started. In the beginning, we didn't know, they got the patches off their uniform. We didn't know they were Russians, like private military contractors, whatever. But it became clear after at least like a few months, a year, that, this was basically a Russian invasion under a pretense. So they start the year in 2014. Trump comes into power in 2016, and he stays into power till 2020. And in this whole time, Vladimir Putin did fuck all in Ukraine. He didn't escalate. The Russians didn't escalate the situation. Right? And you think if Trump was an agent of the Russian government and they controlled him, they could have done whatever they wanted. They could have just attacked Ukraine, and Trump and the Russian, the US government would have kind of, not backed them, but, kind of like ignored it, and at least didn't back Ukraine. Right? Nothing like that happens. And then basically as soon as Joe Biden is in government, the Russians escalate this war and go on an all-out attack. So in hindsight, it is idiotic to tell me that Donald Trump was an agent of the Russian government when like this shit all happened under Biden's watch. Right? It's, to me, it looks like, so my theory has always been that Putin didn't do anything in Ukraine and didn't do any other things with Trump because he couldn't judge him, because Trump was a fucking maniac. Trump is a loose cannon, and nobody had any clue. Like, there were all these stories, which I believe, by the way, that the military actually didn't trust him, and was thinking about what we're going to do if he wants the football and he wants to fire nukes, right? And there were these conspiracy theories that the government was actually, like the military was actually considering to like unwire the fucking button basically so that he couldn't launch the nukes. This is something I believe. I look at Trump and I'm like, nobody can just fucking make sense of that guy. That guy is unpredictable. And that's how I think the Russians saw him as well. I think that's why they didn't escalate in Ukraine, because they were afraid. Because Trump, on a bad day, when he just like, I don't know, had a, Ivanka with things, he didn't like, or I don't the fuck know, he would have just like, be like, oh, they invaded, let's send the fucking army in, whereas Obama and Biden are both very predictable people, which generally is a good thing if you're the president of the most powerful country in the world. I'm not saying that Trump was a good president. I would never say that. He wasn't a good president. On the contrary. But like, I think his loose cannon status kind of like, prevented some people to just, based on his tweets, he was like, I don't know, he just wakes up in a bad mood. You don't know what he's gonna do. So like this whole theory that Trump was like a Russian agent was idiotic to me. And I was like, but I'm not a person who goes like, if I think that, I've analyzed the situation, I'm thinking about this, I'm reading stuff, and I'm just like trying to logically analyze it, and I come to this conclusion. And then everybody just tells me, I read the Washington Post or like some German outlet that basically copies everything there, right? And they just say, well, but it's obvious that Trump is an agent of the Russian government, or it's very likely. I don't go like, am I insane? Because these very knowledgeable people are telling me the opposite. I'm going like, no, those people are idiots. And there's obviously helped that I worked in journalism, so I know these are just, as we say in Germany, die kochen auch nur mit Wasser. They also cook with water. They also cook their pasta with water, basically. And it helps that I have a huge ego and think I'm right and everybody else is wrong. But like, that's why I wasn't as affected as maybe somebody who has more self-doubt. But like, even to me, something, these Twitter files, I know where Taibbi is coming from, because I'm thinking, of course it kind of validates what I was thinking. And just from a kind of it's nice to be right. It's nice to think like I was thinking this was going on. I had the same reaction to the Snowden. This was my strongest reaction to the Snowden files. I've talked a lot about how I completely misjudged the Snowden stuff, because I basically was assuming that this stuff was going on anyway. So the only like basic reaction I had to the Snowden revelations for like months was kind of feels good to be vindicated, because me, old conspiracy theorist here, was saying the whole time, like everybody who worked in IT security was saying, of course they're copying every fucking packet they can get. Of course they have huge server farms and they're just pulling it all in, and of course of course they're spying on Americans as well. What do you think? But like, to me, this is still very important. I still think this is like what Taibbi says there explains to me. I think the Twitter files are one of the most important stories in tech in the last 10 years. So I think they're one of the biggest tech stories, or I think the biggest tech story of 2022. And just the Snowden revelations in 2012, just about 10 years later, it's kind of like another important thing, except the whistleblower this time isn't a poor guy who has to flee to Russia, but like the richest man in the world, right? Which is weird. And I have some qualms about that, but as I said when I talked about this last time, as a journalist, you kind of can't be picky where your information comes from. You have to make sure that you think it's correct, but like the source doesn't really bother me so much. And it kind of shows something that I've been suspecting for a long time, and to Taibbi as well. And it shows everybody, especially these people that aren't as involved in like the minutiae, that aren't geeks, like probably a lot of the people listening to this podcast, that aren't involved in like how social networks work. It shows to them like what has happened here, that we have that basically we have assumed that the internet and social media and all this new stuff is amazing, and that shows us the reality, or at least a representative version of reality. And what we see now here is that that's actually not true. We have been lied to, we have been manipulated, and by government agencies like the FBI and the CIA, and as we're going to see today, the US military, by the governments of Donald Trump and Joe Biden. This is a truly bipartisan effort. This stuff shows us that like what we saw on social media wasn't as organic and as real as we thought it was. There was stuff that was suppressed, deleted, hidden, had derogatory labels put on it, so people didn't trust it anymore. And interestingly, this whole thing seemed to have started with, this is also something we learned through the Twitter files, with the election of Hillary Clinton in 2016. And I've actually, I've talked to a fellow journalist just today about this, and he made a good point. He said that he feels like, Taibbi and like Schellenberger and the people working on the Twitter files clearly show that this whole stuff was a reaction to the 2016 election. But what my colleague said was like, this Hillary Clinton losing the election, and we will never. This is not something you can figure out like factually now. But like, I am like, my analysis of the situation is that she lost the election fairly. Like that she just lost the election. I believe she was the wrong candidate. Not enough people liked her. Everybody underestimated the backing that Trump had. The media just shitting on Trump for months before the election. I think had the opposite effect with a lot of voters. And I think people just generally misjudged the whole situation. And so Clinton, who wasn't as liked as, she thinks she is, and a lot of Democrats and supporters and people just hate Trump, thought she was, because she was just basically, everybody assumed Donald Trump is such a buffoon and such an idiot that you could basically have a hand puppet run against him and the hand puppet would win. But that just wasn't the case. And so what my colleague pointed out was that her loss, her probably legitimate loss in this election, bruised her ego and the ego of the Democrat Party so much that this created a trauma. I mean, it certainly created a trauma in the public, in the media and the public. You can, if you read the coverage and you can look it up, you read and you watch TV, like of the day after the election, everybody's like, what the fuck happened? And they're just like, the journalists they're traumatized. They're almost like, some of them talk about this election like somebody just dropped a nuclear bomb on Washington. It's kind of like a little bit, I recently rewatched like the 9/11 stuff, and it's like some of the reactions of the journalists are almost similar, which is kind of weird. But like, this like caused a violent reaction within, and funnily enough, within like parts of the government that didn't like Trump. I think there's a good reason why the FBI is so involved in all this shit, because the FBI, as we know from stuff that leaked in the beginning, that was very anti-Trump. And actually, some parts of the FBI actually worked against Trump for a while. I think that's government agencies. I mean, we're talking, Trump was now elected, and we're talking like Democrat like senators being able to influence policy, and the way, like, together with the FBI and influencing companies like Twitter to do things, right? So basically the idea was that Clinton couldn't have lost this election fairly. Like that, it just wasn't possible. You can't lose to somebody like something like Donald. You can't lose to the orange man. It's not possible. So there has to have been meddling by probably the Russians, and then they just fantasized this idea, and they just got it into their heads, and this is how this whole thing started. And we actually I talked about this a little bit before, but I will talk about this more. I will probably talk about this in part 5. Just like there was like a thread by was it by Taibbi? I think by Taibbi. There was some stuff in the Twitter files that was basically, I think it was by Taibbi, that was about how this happened, like how the government, how Twitter let these people in, why did Twitter enable this censorship? And we're going to talk about more about like how that actually came across to pass, like how there was like a Democrat senator who like pushed this, and then it all just took on a life of its own. But it happened with this incident when Hillary Clinton wasn't elected, and parts of the political establishment in Washington suddenly decided this could not have been like the voters' choice, right? This must have been meddling, Russian influence on the election. And they thought, they were like, then we had this Cambridge Analytica, and we had Facebook, and then later Twitter, and the government saying, well, there must have been some influence, and I'm gonna talk about in an upcoming episode, probably also episode 5, how like Twitter is trying to find this, and they can't really find evidence of Russian meddling, but then the people in some committees in the government say, well, we still, like, in the parliament go like, you know, but it must be there. And then at some point they put so much pressure on Twitter that Twitter just admits it, right? But what their reaction was is that we need to fight this, so we need to censorship. We need to censor shit on social media that is dangerous, right? That is influencing things like the election. We can't have this happen, for example, in 2020 again. So we need to influence this stuff, and they built this machine, which I've talked about before as well on the show, and it doesn't only get used against, like, you know, Russian interference, but in every crisis since, of course, Russian interference, Trump getting reelected, but also the pandemic and then the war in Ukraine, we see that the US government is like actively manipulating opinions on Twitter, and it takes on like this it becomes this thing that we do now, apparently, right? And they basically they start to, you can't manipulate reality, but what you can do is you can manipulate people's perception of reality. And that is this disconnect that Taibbi talks about, right? When you like normal people who don't think really about these things and they just consume what's in the media and what's on Twitter, whatever, they just start living in this alternate, I think on No Agenda, they called it like Dimension B, right? In this alternate universe. But the people of us who you listen to the show, who are like thinking about things, they're like, this doesn't make any sense. And then they look deeper into things, and then they're like in this other dimension, right? They're in Dimension A, which is closer to reality. And so they do kind of start manipulating reality, because they manipulate this digital sphere, the way people, they manipulate how people perceive reality. And that also like flows over to reality, right? Because, if you have that, and you have journalists writing stories on that, you have politicians creating laws based on this, then this like virtual reality, for lack of a better term, becomes real reality. Because then suddenly everybody believes that, the Hillary Clinton's emails were hacked, even though they weren't. Right? Those were, or like there were misinformation. They were hacked, probably, but like there were misinformation, right? Which they weren't. They were legitimate emails. Or everybody believes that the Hunter Biden stuff was hacked, even though it wasn't. It was just stuff left in a repair shop and somebody copied a hard drive. There are still people, and I know journalists, which fills me with shame, but I personally know journalists who believe that the Steele dossier was real and that Trump actually did pee on some prostitutes, which is bullshit. We know this. This is like, this has come out, but it's been swept under the rug. It's been like the perception of reality, especially on Twitter, has been massaged in a, so that this is, it's the Steele dossier still is real. And because the journalists generally read Twitter and then they cover this stuff, they still believe that. And the large part of the public who reads this shit that they write believe this as well. It is weird. Okay, I've neglected Twitch chat for a while, so let's do a little feedback section here, a little interstitial. Indie Gaming Access, again, total lack of understanding of the people who actually vote. Yeah, exactly. It's like in Germany, it's like the people live in Berlin, like politicians live in Berlin, right? And they're going like, we don't need cars, we can just go by public transport. And they completely, like, they're so out of the loop. They don't understand that there's parts of Germany that are rural, where there's no fucking public. There's fucking parts of Schleswig-Holstein where there's no public transport at all. There's parts where people post this on Twitter as well, so some people should know, but like there's like this bus schedule, and there's like a bus a day, and when they go, we're just gonna outlaw cars, then like it's just is absolutely unrealistic. Or like, oh, it's just electric cars. Have you been in these places? Have you seen the power grid? Like, these people are just like so divorced from people who will just have another life experience, which is normal. That's just the thing that happens. The people live different lives, and they just completely like zone this out. And because the reality gets massaged on social media, they just follow their own people. Like they go like, oh, these people who tell me on Twitter that I'm an idiot because, you know, they still need cars, they're just like trolls and whatever, so I'm just going to block them. And pretty soon, like they're very block happy, these kinds of people. And pretty soon they live like in this bubble, in this alternate reality where they just don't see that other stuff. It's horrifying. And it creates a lot of problem. Astro C has a good point. The same as the Brexit vote. Exactly. Like the people who just like deluded themselves in that was just manipulated because they couldn't conceptualize that there were people in the same country who have a very different life experience and who actually thought leaving the EU was a good idea. I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm not a fan of the EU, but I generally think Brexit was a bad idea. That's we talked about this on the show for a while as well. I discussed this with Mike, but like the thing is, just because I think it's a bad idea, I'm not presuming that everybody thinks that way. I know that there are people have like, I'm a fucking journalist. I work in my pants. I'm actually literally working I'm doing a podcast in my pajama pants right now. And Windows just gave me an error here. This is not good. Audio will be lost. The computer is not keeping up with writing audio to disk. Okay. Should probably pause the recording at this point. Whew. We're having some issues. What the hell is going on? I've never had this happen before. Give me a second here. Let me see if nope. I don't think OBS is complaining, so the stream is all good. No frames missed to rendering lag. Okay, I'm gonna need to pull up some shit here. Give me a second here. What is going on? Are my disks full? No, the disks are okay. Why do I have this? Is my memory is okay. My disk I/O is okay. What is actually going on? Okay. I'm gonna end some tasks that I don't. Oh God, this is okay. Give me a second here. And I was in mid-rant as well. Oh God. I can't even do this. What are you doing? Oh, it might actually be my backup software doing shitty things in the background. Okay, that should be good. Right. I'm sorry about this. Disk error. No, the disk is okay. It's also not full. I think this was my backup thing. What? Let me see. Let me see what this. At least Hindenburg doesn't crash and burn like the actual Hindenburg, but it actually warned me. That is good. And Windows just. The thing is, just because I think it's a bad idea, I'm not presuming that everybody thinks that way. I know that there are people have like, I'm a fucking journalist. I work in my. And Windows just gave me an error here. This is not good. Journalist. I work in my. I know that there are people have like, I'm a fucking journalist. I work in my. Audio will be. Okay. Let's keep going from this point. Totally seamless. We're just gonna I'm gonna try to get back in the ranting mood, and then we totally do this totally seamless. Where's my beer? You know, I'm a fucking journalist. I work in my pajama pants right now at like 10 in the afternoon, at night, recording a fucking podcast. Right? I'm not a normal person. I'm not somebody who has to like go out and do a 9 to 5 job, or like till a field, or like, you know, care for the cows or whatever. Right? But like, I know that. I don't assume that I'm like the only kind, like that I'm the be all end all. And like, I don't know, these politicians especially, like they think everybody's a politician or something. I don't know what's going on. As Astro says, media was only the other side wanted to exit the EU. I mean it's they just couldn't. They're so living in their own world that they just, with the Trump election and Brexit, that they couldn't even conceive of people being of a different opinion, which is quite like, that's the level of delusion that is quite amazing, especially if you're not like just a person, if you're just actually on TV or writing newspapers, like what the actual fuck. So it was manipulated by the evil ones. Yeah, exactly. So I don't think, the thing is, I don't 100% know that the election was manipulated or that Brexit was manipulated. If we get good evidence that it was, you know, I'm going to be the first one to say, well, it actually was, and let's do a podcast episode about that, or two, right? Or write about it. That's quite remarkable. But like, to just presume, I mean, what happened to, was it Henlon's razor or whatever it is? Like, what happened to the fucking, like, maybe the easiest explanation is actually the like, the obvious easiest explanation is actually the good one, like, aside from like the far-fetched conspiracy theory, right? Maybe people actually voting for the thing you didn't like is a lot more likely than the fucking Russians manipulating everything. Yeah, it's and now I don't know. I have no idea where I was because I went to address your feedback, because but that's important. So you know, I'm not going to complain about that. Yeah, but you know, you could see this shift in reality now with everything, and basically every new crisis that happens, it's like the Ukraine war. It's like inconceivable to people that you could be of the opinion, as for example, as a German, that like we should just be neutral in this fucking war. People are like, how can you say that? Why not? Especially if the same people told me for years, like I talked to these same people, and they were always like, oh, they are talking about World War II, right? And then they're like, well, they're always envious or kind of like looking up to Switzerland for being neutral. And they will always extol to me the virtues of being, you know, a neutral country, and, you know, how you just shouldn't get involved in wars. And this war happens, and they're like, how can you even say that you should be neutral? It's like, this, and this is why I'm talking about this for this long time. I am with Taibbi. I think this is very important, and it's very, like, the ones of us who are thinking about these things and who have been declared insane for the last few years, and who are still being declared insane, because obviously the Twitter files are all bullshit and it's all evil Elon Musk, which is the current narrative. You know, but like, it's important for us to see like that we are vindicated by this shit. But like with now it's like war in Ukraine is like, you can't even be of the opinion. Like, you know, I could see somebody be of the opinion that, you know, parts of Ukraine actually belong to Russia and they're pro-Russian. I mean, I find that horrible, but like, that is an opinion one could have, and I'm not gonna like deny them that opinion. It's maybe a horrible opinion, but like I can see how people can have that opinion, right? I'm not like completely dismayed at like how can you have this opinion? People have all kinds of opinions. People are also idiots, but like, you know, why is it so weird for somebody to have a different opinion? And these people are so fucking so. And I don't have this problem that Matei has or other people have, where they're like, oh, maybe I'm getting psychological problems because of this. Because I'm like, I can see through these people. These people are idiots. I've had discussions in the last week. So there's currently, there's been discussions for Germany to sell or send tanks to Ukraine, and we're talking battle tanks like Leopard 2 battle tanks, main battle tanks. And now, you know, we're not saying we're sending them like, you know, like scout tanks or whatever. But like literally, I'm like in at least 2 instances, 2 people I follow on Twitter, and one of the person I know quite well, were actually voicing the opinion that they didn't understand why the German government wasn't sending these tanks to Ukraine. And I distinctly remember, and I did look up, in these 2 cases, I did look up them saying, a year or 2 years ago, they were making fun of the German army and their inability to keep their Leo 2 tanks running. And they're like, ha ha ha, shitty tanks, and this is war is evil, and so it's good that these tanks aren't working. And now they're like, why are we not sending tanks to Ukraine? I mean, these people are so fucking inconsistent. It's not like I will never go and think like, well, you're the wrong, and like, you know, you just like have to remember what they said 2 years ago, and you go like, this doesn't make any fucking sense. Like 2 years ago or a year ago, you didn't want us to have any tanks, and now you're like, why are we not sending tanks to these people? What? This shit doesn't make any sense. Like it just anyway. I get like, you know. Yeah. I think it's good that that this is kind of vindicating us now. It's kind of so it's not all bad, right? Not all of this Twitter file stuff is bad. Like it's vindicating us. It's vindicating us conspiracy theorists who can now show that there was an actual conspiracy. There was a conspiracy by the US government, by intelligence services like the FBI, to conspire with a company, Twitter, and other companies and other social media companies to delete and censor shit. And we knew this, and we were saying this, and they called us conspiracy theorists. Well, guess what? The conspiracy theory was real. Just how 10 years ago, the people who said, of course the NSA is spying on everybody and copying all the internet traffic. We know that there's a room at D6 in Frankfurt at the big internet, like, you know, node, the biggest internet node in the world, where there's like a room where supposedly they mirrored all the switches for some reason, and they're probably copying all the traffic there. And they were like, oh no, that's so far-fetched, you're conspiracy theorists, you're crazy. Well, guess what? It was real. Snowden came out and said, you know, and now we all believe that. Well, guess what? There was sometimes, not all the time, most of the time probably not. Sometimes the people just voted for the people you didn't like. But sometimes there's a conspiracy theory. Sometimes, and in this case as well, it was real. So, you know, I like, this is why this is also a balm for my soul. And this is very important. But I think the takeaway is not only that, you know, the ones of us who thought this was all a bit weird are right. The takeaway is that there's actually manipulation going on, and that these government agencies are trying to manipulate the way how the public perceives the world. And we have to remember this. And we have to fucking talk about this, and we have to write stories, and I have to do podcasts, because the fucking light media and the mainstream media is not fucking doing it. They're just like, oh, we knew all this is all boring, let's move on. No, because you've been part of this bullshit, and this is why you think this isn't a story, because you were complicit, right? Because a lot of you were of the same opinions than these people who were doing the censorship. And so you didn't object to it. But it's bad. It's bad. It's shit. And sooner or later, it'll come back to haunt you. Right? Sooner or later, there'll be a government in power that is actually fucking evil. That is actually like some neo-Nazi government or whatever. Not like Donald Trump, but like real, not just some dumb buffoon, but real evil people. And you will have created the fucking censorship machine that these people will use to get into power and to stay in power and to fuck us all over. That's a lesson we have to take from history. This stuff, you can't go, and especially as a journalist, you can't go, this is all fine as long as it's used for a good purpose. No, there are things that should not be done, right? There are just things that should not exist. The idea that certain ideas need to be banned because they're dangerous, that in itself is dangerous. And we know that from history. So this is important. Right? And this is why I'm harping on about this. But anyway, let's get into something that is actually, I want to switch topics a bit now from this rant and go to something that we actually learned in the Twitter files. This was actually before Christmas. But it's something that I also find important. And I'm probably also going to rant about. But let's talk about the U.S. military and censorship on Twitter and how Twitter was fucking full of hypocrisy. All right, and before we do that, I'm going to take a break. I have to edit this now. It's gone all to hell now anyway. I really have to sort this update program out. I just can't. Why can't I put a cue point? Because it's not recording anymore. Well, I'll find this point. I'll have to edit this anyway. I'm gonna take just a 2-minute break. I'm gonna get myself another drink and then we'll keep going with this. I'll be back. Don't go anywhere. Fucking disk IO errors. There's always something new. I'm now podcasting for, I don't know. How long am I podcasting for? I actually have to get a calculator. No! Oh my God. What's going on? I don't want to start Calibre. I want to start the calculator, God. It's been 17 years. It's been almost 17 years. I've been podcasting for 17 years, and there's always something new. Like, this is new. This is legitimately new. I've never had this problem before. Well, it stays fun. It's Brexit. I've got one of those foreign hard drives. I got one of those fucking Chinese hard drives. It's probably FBI attacking me or something. Anyway, let's keep going here. That button. So let's talk about the U.S. military now. So one of the things we learned in the Twitter files was that the U.S. government, in this case the military, the U.S. military, the Pentagon, was running propaganda accounts, which, I guess, this is none of this is surprising. Of course, they were running propaganda accounts, and of course, Twitter wasn't censoring them and was actually helping the U.S. government run these propaganda accounts. But I think it's still very important to talk about this. I learned this, as I said, during the Snowden revelations. Just because something isn't surprising to me doesn't mean it's a story. This is a fucking scandal, right? This is Twitter once again lying. And they're lying, and I don't use that word lightly. They were lying. They said they were monitoring and taking stringent actions against state-sponsored propaganda on their platform. Meanwhile, they knew that the U.S. government was, the U.S. military was running accounts, was running propaganda accounts, and they actually whitelisted and they helped them. So this is from a story from Lee Fang on the Intercept. I'm going to read a little bit out of this. So on July 26, 2017, Nathaniel Kahler, at the time an official working with U.S. Central Command, also known as CENTCOM, a division of the Defense Department, emailed a Twitter representative with the company's public policy team with a request to approve the verification of one account and whitelist a list of Arab language accounts, quote, we use to amplify certain messages. Quote, we got some accounts that are not indexing on hashtags. Perhaps they were flagged as bots. Shadow banned. Visibility filtered. Wrote Kahler. Quote, a few of these had built a real following and we hope to salvage. Kahler added that he was happy to provide more paperwork from his office, or SOCOM, the acronym for the U.S. Special Operations Command. I find it hilarious, by the way, that the U.S. Special Operation Command is just setting up Twitter accounts. But all right. At least that's one of the things they're doing. You imagine like Halo jumps and fucking Navy SEALs and infiltrations and assassinations, and some people are just doing Twitter accounts. So what do you do at SOCOM? It's this fucking SOCOM rifle. Like you think like this guy's like, yeah, I work at SOCOM, and you're like, oh yeah, he's like in tactical gear and he's training all day. So what do you do? Well, I mainly set up Twitter accounts and then I email Twitter to whitelist them. Hilarious. Twitter at the time had built out an expanded abuse detection system aimed in part toward flagging malicious activity related to the Islamic State and other terror organizations operating in the Middle East. As an indirect consequence of these efforts, one former Twitter employee explained to The Intercept, accounts controlled by the military that were frequently engaging with extremist groups were being automatically flagged as spam. In his email, Kahler sent a spreadsheet with 52 accounts. He asked for a priority service for 6 of the accounts, including at Yemen Current, an account used to broadcast announcements about U.S. drone strikes in Yemen. Around the same time, at Yemen Current, which has since been deleted, had emphasized that U.S. drone strikes were accurate and killed terrorists, not civilians, and promoted the U.S. and Saudi-backed assault on Houthi rebels in that country. Yeah, of course. Obama's was like the Killer Tuesdays. It's all good. You never had any weddings. No little children bombed. It's all smart bombs. They just get the evil guys. Yeah, totally. Other accounts on the list were focused on promoting U.S.-supported militias in Syria and anti-Iran messages in Iraq. One account discussed legal issues in Kuwait. Though many accounts remained focused on one topic area, others moved from topic to topic. For instance, Dala2EL, one of the CENTCOM accounts, shifted from messaging around drone strikes in Yemen in 2017 to Syrian government-focused communications this year. On the same day that CENTCOM sent its request, members of Twitter's site integrity team went into an internal company system used for managing the reach of various users and applied a special exemption tag to these accounts, internal logs show. The effect of the quote whitelist tag essentially gave the accounts the privileges of Twitter verification without a visible blue check. Twitter verification would have bestowed a number of advantages, such as invulnerability to algorithmic bots that flag accounts for spam or abuse, as well as other strikes that led to decreased visibility or suspension. Sorry, I'm gonna have to have a sip of beer here at this point. This podcast is totally not sponsored by Radeberger Pilsner. I wish it was. Carla told Twitter that the accounts would all be USG attributed Arabic language accounts tweeting on relevant security issues. That promise fell short, as many of the accounts subsequently deleted disclosures of affiliation with the US government. The Intercept identified several accounts that initially listed themselves as US government accounts in their bios, but after being whitelisted, shed any disclosure that they were affiliated with the military and posed as ordinary users. Quite interestingly, they used some quite cutting-edge technologies. I mean, we're talking like 2017 here. But there was, for example, an account that the military ran that used, this is something the Stanford Internet Observatory figured out actually on Facebook accounts, and there was like one of the US government Twitter accounts that also used one of these images that were also used for propaganda on Facebook, I guess, by the military. And they used like deep fake images. I have a picture in the show notes if you go to Private Citizen Press, which is like of a young man, I guess, who looks real. But it's a deep fake image, which is, quite cutting edge technology, because the problem is if you, if you just use an image that you've got from somewhere, then people can like do Google image search and figure out who that is, right? And you can't just use like some guy because you're probably gonna put him in danger if you do like some psyops shit. So they actually they deep faked images, which is actually quite quite impressive actually. And this is, of course, they did this. These are not many accounts, but there must have been more, I guess. But like this just shows like Twitter's hypocrisy, right? They did this even though they were claiming at the time and before and after that they were always, very diligently fighting state-sponsored misinformation. Quoting from this article, for many years, Twitter has pledged to shut down all state-backed disinformation and propaganda efforts, never making an explicit exception for the US. In 2020, Twitter spokesperson Nick Pickles, every time we read that guy's name, I just crack. Imagine you're just like a PR guy and your name's Nick Pickles. Niklas Gewürzgurke, you'd be called in German. Nick Pickles. In 2020, Twitter spokesperson Nick Pickles, I just can't keep a straight face. Twitter spokesperson Nick Pickles, in a testimony before the House Intelligence Committee. It's like in fucking Congress. Speaker of the House, today we have this is witness Nick Pickles. I'm sorry. In 2020, Twitter spokesperson Nick Pickles, in a testimony before the House Intelligence Committee, said that the company was taking aggressive efforts to shut down, quote, coordinated platform manipulation efforts, end quote, attributed to government agencies. In 2018, for instance, Twitter announced the mass suspension of accounts tied to Russian government-linked propaganda efforts. 2 years later, the company boasted of shutting down almost 1,000 accounts for association with the Thai military. But rules on platform manipulation, it appears, have not been applied to American military efforts. And they didn't know about these accounts because, quoting further, the emails obtained by The Intercept show that not only did Twitter whitelist these accounts in 2017 explicitly at the behest of the military, but also that high-level officials at the company discussed the accounts as potentially problematic in the following years. Jim Baker, you remember Jim Baker, our friend from the FBI. Jim Baker, then the Deputy General Counsel of Twitter, in the same thread wrote that the Pentagon appeared to have used, quote, poor tradecraft, dissing the other agency. and setting up various Twitter accounts sought to potentially cover its tracks and was likely seeking strategy for avoiding public knowledge that the accounts are, quote, linked to each other or to DoD or to the USG. So basically, they set up these accounts with bios that said they're, linked to the US government. And then they later changed that. And so, people like journalists from The Intercept could just look in the Wayback Machine and figure that shit out. Poor tradecraft indeed. Baker speculated that in the meeting, the, quote, DoD might want to give us a timetable for shutting them down in a more prolonged way that will not compromise any ongoing operations or reveal their connections to DoD, end quote. Twitter executives remained aware of the Defense Department's special status this past January, so we're talking January 2020. A Twitter executive recirculated the CENTCOM list of Twitter accounts originally whitelisted in 2017. The email simply read FYI. Oh my god. Thank you for resubscribing, IndieGamieX. This kind of threw me off. I could have just kept going because I'm not that's on another another audio track, but I didn't. No, it's all good. It's all good. I have it turned on. It's all good because it's on a different audio track, but it just threw me off. I'm going to get used to this shit. Thanks for resubscribing. I appreciate it. Thanks for supporting the show and the channel. Where was I? The email simply read FYI and was... Oh, did I mark this? Yeah, I did. Okay. The email simply read FYI and was directed to several Twitter officials, including Patrick Conlon, a former Defense Department intelligence analyst, then working on the site integrity. This company is full of spies. Then working on the site integrity unit as Twitter's global threat intelligence lead. I mean, this is why Elon fired everybody. You don't want a company full of ex-spies. Internal records also showed that the accounts that remained from Carla's original list are still whitelisted. And then, of course, we had, mostly reporting on Facebook. Last year, the Washington Post kind of revealed this operation, and then Twitter, of course, kind of tried to minimize the blowback. And that was kind of the point when they, before that, they deleted most of that account. But most of these accounts, but this is kind of the point when they were, when they took action. They certainly didn't take action before, even though they knew about this. They knew, last year. They knew from the beginning. Anyway, so the story kind of, let me just end this by quoting the rest here. Following the mass suspension of many accounts this past May, Twitter's team worked to limit blowback from its involvement in the campaign. Shortly before publication of the Washington Post story in September, Katie Rosborough, then a communications specialist at Twitter, wrote to alert Twitter lawyers and lobbyists about the upcoming piece. Quote, "It's a story that mostly focuses on DoD and Facebook. However, there will be a couple of lines that reference us alongside Facebook in that we reached out to them, the DoD, for a meeting. We don't think they'll tie it to anything much related or name any Twitter employees. We declined to comment," she wrote. Much is a reference to Peter Zatko, a Twitter whistleblower who filed a complaint with federal authorities in July alleging lax security measures and penetration of the company by foreign agents. Well, it also looks like this company was not so much penetrated as, these people were invited in. It was full of local agents, like ex-spies. Which, we talked about this before. It's not so much a surprise, but I just wanted to point this out, this galling hypocrisy, right, of a company that says they're doing everything to fight government misinformation because they've kind of been forced into doing that. We'll talk on a future episode how that happened, but they publicly said this, and meanwhile they were protecting active, they weren't ignoring, they were so this is why we know that they lied as a company. The company people who were in charge knew that they were helping the US military, government-backed, purport government-backed propaganda. But this is the thing. This is the core flaw in people thinking that is at the bottom of all of this. This belief that if you kind of do something wrong, if you do it for the right reasons, right, the end justify the means, it's okay. These people are lying. They're doing the opposite of what they said they were doing, but it's okay because they're doing it for the right cause. And this is, it's hard to state how bad this is, because we're talking this is not only Twitter. This is the US government, right? The US government who has decried for years propaganda in China, from China, propaganda in Russia, from Russia. The same people who which I'm going to talk about in the future as well, who pushed policy and supported EU policy and EU's laws to outlaw RT, right? I follow RT on Twitter because I'm a journalist. I can't get that information. I can't get whether it's government. I don't fucking care. I just want information on the Ukraine war or whatever, on the situation in Russia. I can't, as a journalist, I can't fucking get information from Russia. I can't. VPNs, and I know. But I can't get that information. That information has been censored because that is so-called misinformation or propaganda. And a lot of it is propaganda, but some of it isn't. But I know that this fucking US military stuff was propaganda, but that's okay because it's from the US. I'm German. I don't trust the US government more. I don't trust my government. I don't trust any government. But I don't inherently, to me as a German, the US government is not more friendly than the Russian government. It just isn't. It's a foreign government. Technically, under international law, and it is the same thing. To my government, the U.S. government is the same as the Russian government. It's a sovereign state. It's a superpower that we have relations with. We have better relations with the U.S. government than we have with the Russian government, historically and right now. But it's the same fucking thing. And people who think, I just can't understand. I just can't understand irrational people who think about things, journalists saying that, okay, it's okay if we censor this stuff because it's evil and it's dangerous. But the other propaganda is okay. How do you get there? Am I the only one? Am I just please write in. Go to Private Citizen Press. Tell me, am I the only one? Am I crazy? I just don't. I don't get it. Right? It's the fact of doing this is dangerous. I would be amenable to discussing. I'm generally very much against censorship, and I think censorship is not a good thing, and it never works. But I would be amenable to discussing whether just having, if you're on a social network and you're running a social network company, whether deleting all government propaganda wouldn't be a good thing. I generally think it wouldn't work, but if you actually did it impartially and you did it to all government propaganda, including your own government, it would probably be a net good thing. Like my problem would be you could never catch all of it, and it would never be impartial, and it never works because people don't, because people are flawed. People don't work like this, right? They will always make an exception for the good propaganda or their government. Propaganda is just never a good thing. I watched a Star Trek Voyager episode the other day where typical old school good Star Trek, where it's just like an ethical dilemma, right? Where they're on this planet and B'Elanna, who is like the half Klingon engineer, somebody bumps into her and she has like violent thoughts because, she has Klingon heritage. And then like the thought spreads because they're telepaths, and then she gets indicted, and it's like they're gonna erase her memory or do something horrible to her brain. Doesn't really matter, but you don't want this to happen to B'Elanna. And then Tuvok, who is a Vulcan, he's the security chief, and he understands telepathic societies and how like this kind of violent thought can be a problem in those societies. He's actually sympathetic to this law, and he discusses with Captain Janeway, this whole thing, and Janeway at some point has this speech where she talks about how like the Federation, an enlightened society in the future, has basically come to this conclusion that censorship doesn't work. And in this case, it's about like of course the society tries to regulate what people think. So it's like typical like thought crime kind of thing, right? But like basically, it's this whole episode is like a metaphor for censorship in general, and why I've always argued that like the German censorship laws about Nazis and Nazi symbols don't work, and I think they're actually harmful, and they're doing the opposite to the intended effect, and they just mystify those symbols, and they get people interested in symbols that at the end of the day are just symbols. If we just treated them as symbols, right? If we just didn't like mystify the swastika, which is also like a Hindu religious symbol, right? If we just if we vilified the people using, like, it's not the swastika that is bad, right? It's the Nazi party and what they did that was bad, and it's people today who identify with that, who I don't know, obviously don't object to mass murder, who use that symbol. But it's not the symbol, it's not the usage of the symbol. And it actually, if you let them use the symbol, it actually makes it easier to figure out who these people are. I mean, you can't prosecute them for using the symbol, I guess, but that's kind of silly anyway, and doesn't really lead to anything in Germany either. It's just like it does not work. People think it works. People think ideas are evil, but like this whole Voyager episode is just about how like ideas aren't the problem. It's acting on those ideas that's a problem. And a government or any organization that thinks it can solve a problem, whether that's a real problem or an imagined problem, by suppressing these ideas, is just doing the wrong thing. That never works. And it's also dangerous, because it doesn't work, right? Because you do not get rid of the idea, and that's what these people. I mean, this is the same thing with Brexit and with Trump. What these people don't understand, the people that promote the censorship and think it's good, they think that if you can take, if you can minimize, if you can suppress people expressing an idea, then that will stop them having that idea, and it will stop that idea from spreading. And they're just like completely mistaken. Like their worldview is just not in the same phase, to use the Star Trek term, with reality. And this is why they'll never understand how things work. And then they're suddenly surprised if these movements still exist. They're like, if we banned all the MAGA people from Twitter, why are there still people supporting Donald Trump? Because you didn't take the cause away. You didn't analyze why they're supporting Donald Trump. You didn't take Donald Trump away. You didn't take any, they can just communicate. They can just call themselves on the phone or whatever. There were ways before Twitter, just by banning their opinion of Twitter. You haven't deleted that opinion. You can ban these people off Twitter, but these people still have that opinion, right? And you'll probably galvanize their support. You'll probably make it worse come the next election. You're not dealing with the problem. By outlawing the swastika, you're not dealing with the fact that they're neo-Nazis in Germany. And you're not dealing with the fact that people are badly educated. They don't understand what the Nazis did in World War II, and that they did horrible shit, and that nobody actually wants this. That is the problem. These people are idiots, or they're psychopaths, or I don't know. But that is what these people, the experiences they have in their life they have, and what they're thinking is the problem. You can't just, take their expression away, take their symbols away, ban them off social media, and then think those people go away. And I don't understand. I understand why these clueless politicians think this works, right? The people who think it can't be possible that Hillary just lost the election. I understand those people are relatively dumb, that they don't understand what's going on. But these intelligence services, they must know that this doesn't work. I think they just want control or something. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard to understand, but I know it's a problem, which is why I'm talking about it and why I won't shut up about it. Anyway, this won't be the last episode on the Twitter Files. Let me know what you think, because I value producer feedback. So you can go to that section in the show notes, or you can go to the contact at the top of the page. There is a menu. There's a contact link that gives you all the contact information, and you can write me. And that page is privatecitizen.press. Anyway, we had some discussions in the forum. I prefer the forum for feedback because we have discussions develop. It's quite nice. Episode 139, last episode where I talked about the plans for the podcast. I also talked, a little bit about some feedback, and we talked about education. And in response to that, El Terrestris Jim said the following on the forum. I think the topic education is certainly interesting. The internet most definitely has a big influence on education. But as with most things, there are two sides to the coin. It means you have almost all the knowledge at your fingertips, but it also means that misinformation can be spread really easily. Therefore, the skill of critical thinking and the ability to check sources for their credibility becomes increasingly important. Credibility. However, schools seem to be very slow in catching up to this development. Yeah, I think, I was kind of saying, I don't see how these problems we have in society can be caused. It's kind of hard to explain how they can be caused by education, when we have many different education systems in all these countries we're looking at, and the problems are largely the same. So I thought maybe it's the internet, maybe it's technology, how that's changing people. And I like how Jim is kind of combining that. I think he's right, and I think this is a very good analysis. Everybody can get all, it's not like back in the day where you had to go through rigmarole to publish a book, and then that was kind of vetted to a certain degree, and you could be there were fewer sources and it was easier to judge them. Now we're at a point where anybody can get all the information, but also everybody can publish all the information. New media, new rules, as I like to say. With that comes the challenge that you now have this very specific challenge to figure out how credible the source is. And yes, I do agree. I don't think schools are preparing students for that, and universities for that matter. Anyway, Jim continues. I also feel that schools teach less and less skills that have use in everyday life. I think some years back there was a discussion. I remember this. I believe it was in Germany. It certainly was in Germany. Then high school students learn to analyze poems, but have no idea how insurance works. And I'm in this. That's how I came out of school, or something like that. And the example in the episode that the student didn't know how to write a letter at least points in the same direction. Yeah, exactly. All these high-level skills, all these things we learn, and some of them are important, like history, I think. But the basics get neglected to some extent, I think. Same thing about computers, right? About how computers work. Nobody fucking knows how computers work anymore. And my generation, I got my first computer when I was 6. I kind of learned this because we had fucking DOS and we had to fucking initialize the mouse driver ourselves if we wanted to play a game. But today's generations don't know this, and this is going to be a problem in the future. Because people just get too used, pun intended, to just use technology, right? They don't, and this is going to be a problem because, it's kind of, there's always the car example. You don't really need to know how your car works. You just bring it to a mechanic. But that's a bit different because you can go through your life and you can understand reality. If you don't know how a car works, you just drive the car. But the internet and digital technology permeates our society to such a degree and influences it to such a degree that if you don't know how technology works, you're just fucking clueless. You're clueless in these cases where we talk about the Twitter files and how social media works, right? And you're clueless in what the intelligence services do. Because if you don't know how the internet works, really, then you don't know these things. And how can you, you can't, when we're talking about things about AI, and that kind of thing, how can you know how something is dependable? How can you check sources and stuff if you don't know how the technology works? Right? If you don't know how machine learning works, you might go and use ChatGPT and think this is I'm just asking it about World War II, and then it'll give me some good information. But if you don't know that, it just cobbles, it's not dependable, right? It's not. This thing is not built to give you correct information. It's just built to give you information that looks correct, which can be very dangerous. So I feel like this is going to be a problem in the future. Yeah, and this is how, I mentioned this before, I'm going to do more episodes on this. This is how the elites are going to control us, basically, because they will know how this shit works, and we won't. Okay, let's take a mark here, and thanks, Mike. 4 years, wow. I've been running this channel for 4 years. This is 4 years. Jesus, I need some fucking sub badges, some proper stuff to give you guys. Man, 4 years. Thanks, man. Thanks for supporting the channel. How's it going? It's going well. The hardware's breaking down, and I'm getting distracted by sub alerts that I've left on purpose. But everything's fine. I can edit this in post. Let's see how seamless I can do this. Totally seamless. So Jim continues in the discussion In the discussion, the question was asked why we see similar developments in different systems. My idea is that a common development in a lot of systems, education systems, is the following. In my opinion, a lot more students or their parents believe that you have to go to university after school. And I think a lot of education systems cater to that thinking. It feels to me that school today prepares the students more to pass tests than to actually understand the topics that are being taught. This means that the curriculum is streamlined accordingly, which leads to the same effect in different systems. Admittedly, I did not research the numbers for this theory. I think it's a good theory, though. And Yevgeny Kuznetsov, I'm still working on that, chiming from Russia and says, sounds about right to me. In Russia, the common misconception of everyone should get a university education leads to noticeable devaluation of said education. Yeah, and it's the same here. It's the same in Germany and, in the UK, as far as I know. And from what I read, it's the same in the US. It's just, it's been more of a problem in the US because the university system is different there, I think. But it leads to this this assumption that people have I think people don't understand what university is, right? It just seems to be people think it's the top education, and it just leads to the assumption that you have a university degree in jobs where you don't need it. So this is how it was explained to me, right? I studied English, politics, and history, and then in my first semester, this was basically explained to me. So university is a education that is aimed at people. Basically, people need to think critically, right? Its original goal was to create scientists, people who do science, right? These days, it's often you have to do some scientific work, and then you're just as a hurdle to get in, right? So a good example would be, this has been the case for decades in the German education system. If you want to become a doctor, you just learn shit, and then you create what is theoretically scientific work, and then you're a doctor, and then you can operate. But basically, becoming a doctor in most respects is just like an apprenticeship. You learn a craft, right? Especially if you become a surgeon or something. That's basically a craft. And they just cram some knowledge and some Latin into them to just pass some tests and write a thesis, and then they're a doctor. But that's not the same as having a PhD. And much the same for lawyers. They just do this training to become a scientist on the side as a pro forma to do their degree, and then they're lawyers, and they're basically just that could be an apprenticeship. You just learn a craft. That's learning a craft. It's like being a journalist. I always thought the J school, the journalism degree is bullshit, because journalism is a craft. I think it's good to go to university to become a journalist, because you learn critical thinking and you learn scientific thinking, but you don't learn to be a journalist. You might also learn how to write, depending on what subject you study. But I would, my wife is a natural scientist, and I respect her very much. She's an amazing scientist, but they can't write for shit. If you studied humanities, these people can't write. They can't write headlines. It's horrible. Biology, medical papers, or physics papers. They're just these people can't write for shit, man. They're trained to write very specific language that is very specific, and I understand why, but it's not good writing. Whereas, there's history papers that are just books that are witty, well written, and these people understand how to use language. It's getting rare these days, but anyway. So yeah, a lot of people don't go to university for the reason you should go to university classically. If you want to become a thinker. So that's to break it down. Right? You want to be somebody who's who earns their living or does whatever they do by thinking. Scientists, people like that. If you work in a company at a desk, you're not paid to think, especially not think critically. You don't need a university degree. You don't need a university degree to become a programmer. That's taught at university is idiotic. Programming is a craft, and that's not. I don't mean that disparagingly. I'm a craftsman. A journalist is a craftsman, right? To a certain extent, somebody like a novelist or somebody who writes scripts for television, that's a craft. That is not. I mean, you can use the skills you acquire in university. You can acquire a lot of knowledge, and that's helpful. You can do it like me and just quit university, just drop out and get that stuff without having to get a good degree. But requiring a university degree for certain jobs is just insane, especially if they're just office jobs at a company or a government office or whatever. It's been that's been a bugbear of mine, and I think it's very true. And I think it's relatively universal throughout at least all Western countries. And yeah, it devaluates university education. It's just it's bad, and I think that's one of the problems. I think we've come to some of the problems here. Although I think, while I think it was okay for the original model to learn. So my professor at university said, you go to school to learn how to learn things. And then you go to the university to think about things, right? To learn how to think about things. And I think this is shifting. I think this should be shifting. I think whereas it was okay in the old model to only learn critical thinking and the scientific method at university, because if you were going to become an attorney or a insurance salesman, you don't need to do critical thinking. I mean, some attorneys maybe do, but generally you don't. So it was okay to just learn critical thinking at university, but as Jim points out, I think we need to shift that down to more like almost primary school level, because of this shift in society where we have access to all this information, but we don't know, is it propaganda, right? Is it US military propaganda? Is it Russian propaganda? Is it a company propaganda? What is it? So I think we need to teach this critical thinking much earlier on, and it actually wouldn't be that hard. The problem is that teachers probably can't do that either. But if we got to a point where teachers could do critical thinking, we could also easily teach it to, it's easy to teach to kids. My parents pretty much ingrained this into me growing up. Right? It's just like an approach. It's a general skepticism that you just don't believe somebody just because they say something, or because it's a. So one thing my parents, I think, ingrained into me from very early age was a lack of respect for authority, right? So I don't for example, something that's very ingrained in people in the US and also to some extent in Australia, which is something I butted into when I lived there, is that it's people have an ingrained respect for members of the military for a reason I never understood, because they're just normal people, right? It's just a job. It's a different job. It involves killing people, but it's just a job. Why would I have respect to somebody who has a rank in the military? More of somebody who's has a rank in a company, in air quotes, right? Rank. Why? That's not as my parents taught me. That's not how you respect. Why you respect people? You respect people based on their actions, and it doesn't matter to me if they wear a uniform or whatever. It's about what they do. And that's just very easy thing that you can teach that to children. And if you have children, I would recommend you do that. You can teach that to children from a very early age. Just teach them a lack of respect for society, for government institutions, They learn pretty quickly that the government is just a collection of people as well. People lie, everybody lies. If you're a kid, your parents lie, you lie, your friends lie, and that also goes for people at the government. The downside to that is that if your child is somewhat intelligent, like I think I was a little bit intelligent, they figure out pretty soon that this extends to their teachers, which will get them in trouble in school. But I think it generally didn't hurt me. Like it hurt my grades in school. Like my grades at the end of high school were not as good as they should have been or could have been, because I was very skeptical and was disagreeing with my teachers a lot. But that didn't hurt me in the end, right? I still studied the stuff I wanted at university, and I dropped out for completely different reasons. And I think it actually helped me in life. I think that's it's just a good attitude, and that's an attitude really that is crucial, because we talk so much on this podcast about like journalists, and like you can't just trust somebody because he writes for like The Guardian, for example. You just can't. There's like idiots writing for The Guardian. There's like, and it's on so many. Like today, somebody linked to it. I was having a Twitter discussion about the Twitter files, and somebody linked to me a fact checker article from the German Tagesschau, which is part of the public broadcasting company, which I don't have inherent respect for, just because they're the broadcasting company, and I know they write shitty things. And then they linked me this fact-checking article on the Twitter files, which was so filled of like incorrect things, of like if somebody reads that and they have no idea about the topic, which I guess is the target audience for this kind of article, they'd be like completely misled by the stuff they wrote, because I think it was intentionally misleading. Of course, I don't know that, but like so in German, the German term for terms of service, TOS, is allgemeine Geschäftsbedingungen. Very German. Allgemeine Geschäftsbedingungen, AGB. So the shortened acronym is AGB. Now, because it's a plural, like in Germany, in German we don't usually, some plurals are with an S at the end, but not all of them. And because it's already a plural, it's not allgemeine Geschäftsbedingungen, which would be the singular, it's allgemeine Geschäftsbedingungen, which is the plural. The acronym is AGB. It's not AGB small s, which would be like for a word where you can form the plural with an S at the end, right? I'm just nitpicking, but like this is like the little things you notice, right? And this is like how you form an opinion on things. So they shortened AGB. They shortened it with an S at the end. It's kind of like there's another famous German acronym that people get wrong, which is LKW, which is Lastkraftwagen, a truck. So the shortened form is LKW, and people write that with an S, but it's also already a plural. So people basically double plural things. It's like the double negation in English. It basically shows somebody that you're not very intelligent, which is okay. If you're just a person, you write that. I don't mind. Like, I'm not a grammar Nazi. I don't give you a nitpick. But if I'm writing a fact-checking article for the German public broadcaster, which is publicly funded, I don't make those mistakes. And this article's been fucking up for months. No, not months now. Well, maybe weeks, sorry. But still, it's been up for a while, and they haven't corrected this. I'm like, I can't trust, I never trust articles that are called fact-check articles anyway, because that whole approach is bull. Maybe I'll do an episode on that at some point, but it irks me a lot. But like, you can't just trust people these days. You can't just trust people because they work for a certain institution, right? You can't just go, well, he's from the CDC and he says that about the virus, so it must be right. No. People from the CDC is wrong all the time. And it's not surprising. Of course, government organizations are wrong. especially in a developing situation. Where did this idea come from that somebody, just because they have a certain, like they work for a certain organization or they have a certain pedigree, that they're trustworthy or not? Like with Elon Musk, I fucking hate Elon. I don't like Elon Musk. But like the argument that the Twitter files are not trustworthy and it's just all bullshit because they originate from a billionaire, from Elon Musk. Like, as much as I don't like Elon Musk, that's just not like, we need to teach this to people. We need to teach this to kids. Like, our whole society's gonna go down the fucking drain if we don't do this. I'm with Jim on this. This is a problem. And it's not that hard, right? This is something that kids can learn. This is not rocket science. It's just like, just don't believe people based on something. Just don't believe people. Just use your own brain. You have the internet. You can look all of this shit up. And it's not that much work. Like, sometimes it's just 5 minutes of work and a few tools. If you know how to use Google image search and you know how to use a search engine and the internet Wayback Machine, you can figure all of this shit out. It's not rocket science. And this is what's driving me so insane, that for a lot of these stories that I, report on this podcast and whatever, that other journalists write about and people believe and have just become like, for example, if you think the Steele dossier is real and Donald Trump peed on the prostitute, you're like 2 minutes away from figuring out that is not the truth, right? We know now. Like, you can type that into any search engine. It's probably Bing. And even though half the internet is biased against you finding out that shit, you can easily find out that shit. It comes from Dr. I'm the Science Fauci, so it must be right. Yeah, exactly. Listen to the science. We're going to talk about that very topic on the fourth part of my Twitter files coverage, but that is something for another day. Anyway, we do have some live feedback here just now from Mike, so I want to go into that. I probably missed something, but what would you classify as writing? You classify writing the Twitter files as when the information has been handed over by Elon Musk. Surely it's not the same as looking at leaked information from a whistleblower. It is. Just in this case, the whistleblower is Elon Musk, right? So you gotta have to like. So I'm. The thing is, I talked about this on a previous episode, which you might have not heard, but like just very quickly, as a journalist, it works like this. I don't care where my information comes from. I don't trust Elon Musk. I'm predisposed to not trusting Elon Musk because I don't trust the guy, because I think he is, he did some really shitty things with companies in the past. He's probably doing it now, I don't trust the guy, but I don't have to, right? Same thing with Snowden. If Snowden comes to me, I don't know who Edward fucking Snowden is. I don't know if he's right, but that's not the point. That's not how you take the information and you independently verify the information. So people who go like, you can't trust this information because it comes from Elon Musk, they're just like, I don't know what they are. They're too slack to look at the information. And I've had journalists do this. And I'm like, have you actually read Taibbi's coverage? Just read Taibbi's coverage. It speaks for itself. It is, I mean, like, what are we saying? Like, what is in here in the Twitter files, right? What's in here that is disputed? Like the fucking FBI. I'm actually talking about this on an upcoming episode. I have that on my list, but like the FBI came out and talked about this and discredited Taibbi. They didn't deny this. Nobody's fucking denying this. Twitter hasn't denied this. Like Joel Roth hasn't denied that all the shit he said in these emails is real. Nobody manufactured these emails. Like nobody's coming out disputing this. That is the reason why I think, and people like Taibbi who did the research think that this is true. I mean, it can be, and it will be filtered, right? There is the people who gives you the information can decide what what they give you, of course, yes. But that's the same with Snowden, right? Or with, in this case, I think, Snowden gave his stash to Greenwald. That's the stuff with Greenwald and Laura Poitras and all the others. Like, they didn't give us everything. Right? They searched through the stuff. They probably missed some stuff, and we haven't seen the raw archive. I mean, that's the downside, right? That's your downside if you don't do it like WikiLeaks. But like, I think in general, this information is pretty much believable, and that's how we do it. Like, we judge. That's how we judge this stuff. We judge it based on the information. I don't really need to know where it comes from, right? And if anybody manipulated this, what probably wasn't even Musk. I don't think he's involved in it. I think it was that fucking FBI lawyer that he fired. That still edited the first Twitter file. Jim fucking Baker. Have the Twitter files been handed over to other journalists than the two original individuals? Did I say that the information was not believable? No, you didn't. Okay, maybe I misunderstood you there. No, so the way it works is Taibbi was involved in this, and I don't know how it works, but I think Musk just chose some journalists he liked, right? Just like Snowden went and chose Greenwald because he liked his writing. So Taibbi was involved, and then Bari Weiss runs the Free Press, which is like a kind of like a media outlet that's built on Substack, and she got a few people she's working with in. So that's how Schellenberger and like this Schellenberger got in, and some other dude. But then today we had some coverage of let me just look at Li Fang, who works for The Intercept. So it's this journalist. How it works, how they say it works is they flew to the Twitter headquarters, and they were able to search. This is like all in the database. Like, this is in email accounts and in Jira and in some internal Twitter tools. So they searched for topics and for names, and they got documents back, which they didn't get back immediately, which were vetted by Twitter lawyers, so working for Elon Musk, which I guess is understandable. And then they redacted mostly names of people, individuals that weren't that weren't responsible for stuff, right? That weren't paid to be in charge, like Joel Roth, right? And all the journalists censored those names. I'm not sure on that. And then they could screenshot it and write down the information, but they couldn't actually take the files from Twitter HQ. So yeah, there are some limitations on this, but I think it's still unprecedented, and it seems to me like this seems legit to me. I'm a skeptical fellow, but like, Matt Taibbi is not kind of the guy who I would think would, like, what did they do? Work, like, get paid by, and what's Musk gaining from this? I mean, yeah, he's probably doing this because he was like in trouble and everybody was shitting on him because he was the new Trump in the media, and he's gaining distraction in the public sphere from this. I guess, yeah, that's what he's gaining from this. But otherwise, I think he's probably even hurting himself because he's bought this company, and this is somewhat tarnishing Twitter's reputation. It's not like a whistleblower leak then if the owner of the files had legal review. Yeah, I guess you don't have that at the whistleblower leak. It's more like what's it, like in legal proceedings when you have what's it called? I forgot. When you have like access, what's it? A discovery. When lawyers redact stuff, but it's still very much like a whistleblower leak. It's just weird because it's a weird kind of it's unprecedented, I think, which I talked about this in the beginning. It's very much unprecedented and so not comparable. Mike says it's clearly hit job, Fab. I don't know. I don't think so. Who would it be a hit job on? Joel Roth, the FBI. Okay, if it's a hit job against the FBI, fair enough. I'm okay with that. I don't like security intelligence services. I mean, I think you could claim the Snowden revelations were a hit job on the NSA. I'm okay with that. And if it's a hit job on Joel Roth, I mean, based on what I've seen in these emails, he was the guy responsible for a lot of the stuff, so maybe deserved. I mean, he hasn't come out and defended himself. He hasn't said this isn't true. So I guess it's true. He hasn't said like, okay, this is only half of the picture because this is why we did it. Also, all of this stuff is very clear. To me, a hit job generally implies would imply slander, like smearing somebody, but like this is all emails. Like this is all. It's kind of like saying leaking Hillary's emails was a hit job on Hillary, right? It's like it's your fucking emails. It's not like somebody made this shit up. Like you wrote this shit. Yeah. I think it's you could frame it in that way. Yes. I'll take the opposite opinion. I would frame it in its transparency. This is unprecedented transparency that we get inside a company and its employers and how they acted, which is unprecedented. We've never had anything like this before. We'll probably never get anything like this. We got this because Elon Musk is mad or like not very intelligent. I don't think Bill Gates would do shit like this. Well, the company's gone. It's not a hit job on Twitter though. He's been promoting Twitter for months. He's like, oh, we got all these views. And it's like, oh, we want to make Twitter good again. I mean, Astro C says, I guess it's two possibilities. One, Musk wants scorched earth on Twitter. Two, causing official internet policies in government level so you can sue sites. Yeah, but that's a thing we need to talk about. Yeah, that's like the safe harbor thing. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have an episode on that as well. I talked about this on the show before, and I think this is a watershed moment for that. I don't think so. I'm gonna say something really controversial here, but like I would be of that opinion that if you have a law like in the US, a section 5205, 502, whatever it is, that says that social media sites can't be sued because they're platforms and they don't have editorial control. And then you have a company doing this, which is censoring at the government's behest, deleting people's tweets, shadow banning people. That is fucking editorial control. If you do that, yes, you should get that protection lifted and you should be sued. I don't say we should get rid of that law. What the consequence of that is, don't do that shit. Don't do government fucking censorship, and then you don't run into this problem. Like, you weren't compelled to do this. There weren't any laws. You just folded because the FBI said, oh, this is against the terms of services, your terms of service, which you made up, right? You could have changed them. You could have said, no, we're changing them. Fuck the FBI. Right? Mike says, I think this is a naive take. That this is, oh, whoa. I haven't been called naive in now about 30 years. He's not interested in transparency. I don't know what he's interested in, but we're getting transparency. Like this is transparency. We're getting a look inside how a social network works and has done this shit that we've never gotten before. This is transparency. It's limited transparency. Dude, I'm a journalist, right? This is against my interest. Like, I'm not happy about Taibbi having this access and me not having it. Like, in my own enlightened self-interest, if we can have just this full database on WikiLeaks, I'm going for that. And I'm looking at this shit myself, I'm not generally defending this approach. I think it's probably better for society. I've come around. I used to be on WikiLeaks full disclosure side, I think this is probably more healthy, especially for people working at Twitter. But yeah, I don't think it's a hit job because I can't see who it is a hit job on. I don't think you can have a hit job at a company. I would agree with Astro C that it's probably Musk wanting scorched earth. But looking at this, imagine you buy a company, you spend $50 billion to buy a company, right? And they told you all this shit. And then you go in there and you figure out that the whole fucking executive level of this company is full of ex-FBI, ex-CIA fucking agents, that your fucking lawyer, your head lawyer, is it's the guy who used to be a lawyer at the FBI and who ran into trouble for just, being shit or whatever he did at the FBI. I would want scorched earth as well. I probably wouldn't open the files, but I would fire all these people as well. If I read these Slack chats that Taibbi and Schellenberger and Barry Weiss have published, I would have fired these people. We have chats where the Jim Baker, that fucking, I'm going to talk about that when we come to the pandemic, but basically Donald Trump just has had a SARS-CoV-2 infection, gets out of hospital and says people should not be afraid of this virus. And then your head lawyer of your company, your ex-FBI head lawyer, says, I don't understand how this is not misinformation. And then Joel Roth, to his credit, has to explain to this fucking guy that optimism is not fucking misinformation. That to tell people they shouldn't be afraid of a disease, that's not misinformation. It's not propaganda. It's not against CDC guideline. You want that fucking tweet banned because the president of the US was too optimistic? What the fuck is wrong with these people? If I'm Elon Musk and I'm buying this company, I'm firing these people as well. Because they're fucking, I don't know, they're either idiots or they're completely misguided by some idealistic vision that orange man bad, which I guess you can have privately, but not if you're working in my company and you're writing this shit into Slack. And I mean, they wrote this shit in chats that were archived. I mean, this shit is all these software things have litigation hold. In case you're sued, somebody pushes a button and all this shit goes into archives. It's not like Musk doing some magic trick and pulling this out. This was all archived and they should have known all this. Especially that fucking FBI lawyer should know that this shit is happening. Because the FBI is often, in discovery processes where they get this litigation hold shit from companies. I fucking know this. I know what litigation hold is. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ. I don't think the company will change much under stewardship. It will not turn into a true public square that was the original idea. I agree with you on that. I don't think so either. I mean, I'm kind of sitting here hoping that they give us the tool where we can figure I want to find, I just want to know. The only thing I want from Elon, I'm going to stop saying I hate his guts if he just fucking gives me the tool where I can see if I was actually shadow banned. I just want to know that. Just for my peace of mind. All right? And then there's nothing else good is going to come out of this. I know that. I've never said that. But it's important for us to know, if we want to understand society, it is important, and it's a very important story, that an intelligence service, spies, an intelligence service took it upon themselves to catalog what people say on a social network and then go to that social network and request content moderation. That is not okay. Companies conspiring with intelligence services to clandestinely or overtly delete content, modify content, That is not fucking okay. If they are fighting, if the FBI is fighting terrorism or whatever the fuck, and they're doing this to defend democracy, then they should be transparent about that. They should tell us that they deleted accounts. Twitter should have told us that they, hid tweets. That they should have told us how these decisions came about. We're gonna get into something that I'm gonna talk about in the next episode. Well, not the next episode of the podcast, but the next episode when I talk about the Twitter files, where we have an executive, a high-ranking executive from Pfizer going to Twitter and saying, you need to hide or delete this tweet because it's basically saying something about vaccinations that I don't want to have known. And this account is just tweeting peer-reviewed papers from highly respected academic journals. And Twitter goes, yeah, that's misinformation. We're going to delete that and we're going to ban this account. Like, that is a fucking scandal. And that's the thing. I don't care about Elon Musk. I don't think this is going to do anything bad about Twitter. I don't, to some degree, care how this information came out. That is important. We need to, this is a story that society needs to be aware of. And it's obviously true. Because you read the stuff, it's believable. It's been corroborated by public information we have, by the people involved, and the FBI hasn't denied it. The Biden White House hasn't denied it. The Trump campaign hasn't denied the stuff they did. The people involved, nobody in any degree has denied any of this. Because it's fucking true. It's from email accounts. It's fucking obvious. And, you can say, okay, it probably didn't happen I'm not saying that, this is happened en masse, right? The military stuff we talk about. We're talking about 50 accounts or something. This is not such a story because it happened often. It's a story because it happened. And because people don't know about this. The only reason I'm going on about this for so much is so long and in so many episodes is because it's not on the fucking Guardian front page. It's not on CNN. It's not like the Snowden revelations, right? It's because it's partisan, and because, as I said before, the people who did this, whose political biases were confirmed by this, don't think it's a bad thing. And that is dangerous. It's gonna hurt all of us. Anyway, Mike, I should give Mike the last word here. So yes, all the bad decisions made by the previous management deserve to be aired. I'm not saying I'm against that. Similar things are still going to happen, just on behalf of other actors. Maybe. Yeah. What I actually found interesting is I think I talked about this on a previous episode, but I can't remember because I've also written about this stuff, is that Jack, who I never really liked either, but the previous CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, also he wrote a blog post and he kind of said, well, I kind of, I'm down with Musk disclosing that, and he kind of sounded like he was ashamed about the things he did. And in his defense, they did a lot of these decisions without telling him. But yeah, I found that very interesting. And that, the previous CEO was actually quite sympathetic to what Musk was doing. So I think that kind of tells us that this whole thing was a mess. Anyway, I've been going on for way too long. Let's wrap up this show. So I thank all the supporters of this show and of this episode. Go to privatecitizen.press. It's a credit section in the show notes that explains how this works. I'm not going to go into that because this episode's been way too long and I've talked about that before. But first off, I want to mention, of course, I'm live streaming this on Twitch, and we had both Indie Gamiacs and Mike the Dane resubscribe to the channel, which obviously helps me as well. Helps the Twitch channel, but also the show, because it, helps me pay the bills. So Mike, 48 months. 48 months. It's 4 years. I didn't even know the channel was running that long. Thanks for supporting the show, both Mike and Indie Gamiacs. I appreciate it a lot. And then I need to thank Patrick Wieland for his Christmas gift to the show, and my showrunners, Saw Galtaran, and also Indie Gamiacs again. Executive producers, Butterbeans, Jaroslav Lichtblau, Rizal, Sandman616, and supervising producers, 1i11g, Avis, Bennett, Piata, Dave, IKN, Jackie Plate, Jonathan M. Hitai, Krunkel, here we go again, Michael Mullen Jensen, Mike, who's also supported us in Twitch earlier, so thanks again. Robert Forster, producers Andrew Davidson, Astral C, Cam, Captain Eckhart, David Potter, Dirk Didi, Florian Pigosh, Joe Poser, Michael Small, Mika, Mr. Amish, Rick Bragg, and RJ Tracy, and associate producers Barry Williams, D, Jonathan, Johan Sonen, Kaisius, Ricky M, Steve Hose, and Vlad. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to your support for the show. You're making it happen. I appreciate it a lot. And I must say, I appreciate you're special people. I appreciate people like Mike, who's in chat, obviously not agreeing with me, but still supporting the show. And this is the kind of spirit I try to foster here. Because it's not about agreeing. It's about having a discussion and hopefully learning at the end and, forming an opinion. And I'm trying. I'm trying, even though obviously I'm very set in my opinion, which is the thing is I think about this a lot before I do an episode, right? So this is like I'm kind of sure about what I'm saying, but Mike's posting a rainbow heart. I didn't even know what kind of emoji is that. I think it's the virtual hug. That's very lovely. I'm feeling warm inside already. I also have to thank Bytemark at bytemark.co.uk. This show doesn't have any sponsors or advertisers really, but Bytemark really, ever since Linux Outlaws, have been providing me with servers to send audio files to people. And so Bytemark at bytemark.co.uk, British cloud hosting company. I couldn't do the show without them, so I'm thanking them here. And then at last, I also need to mention the show's theme song, which is Acoustic Roots by Raoul Kabzali. And then I'm going to play us out with some jazz. I found this on Epidemic Sound. It's fairly new. I saw the album artwork and I saw that I would love this. And the title kind of also fits the episode. The song is called See You in Court by Ludwig Moulin. Some amazing jazz. So I hope I won't see you in court. I hope I'll see you for the next episode of The Private Citizen. Until then, aim to misbehave. And just, think for yourself. right. That was a bit loud, but I couldn't adjust the volume while I was playing it back because of the recording. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it a lot. I appreciate all the support. I don't apologize for throwing me off. It's my own damn fault. I'm trying to learn to deal with it. During podcast recordings, I'll be able to. I'll try to stream more regularly. I can't commit to a schedule right now. I would love to do some game streams, but I barely have time to play games. I don't know. I had pushed some work aside to have like some bit of a lesser workload at the beginning of the year, but then the Twitter files happened and that kind of threw me off. And I don't know. I'm also on a push right now to kind of finish my novel. I've done some work on like tooling and stuff I use. So I have some ideas to do some streams there because I still need to transcribe some pages of the manuscript, and I might actually do that on stream. But right now my life's kind of in flux. I kind of also, to be honest, I had like a lot of things on my mind recently, so I just like I didn't have the peace of mind to stream really. Yeah, but it's just been streaming related. I mean, I'm doing good. Yeah, the book, the book. I'm working on the book. Well, maybe I can show you some shit. I'm actually, well, I can probably show you the ebook. Don't we have the Kindle previewer? So I've put some shit into some work into the producing a preliminary ebook version, which is actually looking quite good, I think. So I'm kind of happy with that. I got like the first 15 chapters in it. So that's like a lot of the stuff. I got some more that I've transcribed, but yeah, it's kind of a lie because all of this is unedited, all this shit. Like I have to do, like once I transcribe the manuscript, I have to do like an editing pass over the whole book. And that's going to be a ton of work, but I really want to finish the book this year. This is my goal. So I'm also going to have to rewrite some of this shit, I think. I'm going to have to rename some characters, I think. I have to do some Control F on this. Yeah, but it looks quite nice. I found this, so I was using Scrivener and that really didn't do it for me. But I found this this software called Atticus, which I'm trying, which kind of does this kind of shit, and it also does print, so it spits out a print version at the same time. So I do have a print version because I also want to publish this through Kindle, like desktop publishing. So this is actually also I'm quite happy with. There's some minor things. Like I don't want to have a page number on this, but I can also export that in Word, and I can probably fix some of that shit. Like this, you don't really want to have that. But like, I'd have to have the book finished and edited. But it's getting there. Like you could, like if I weren't so like perfectionist, like there's people who would like print it this way. But yeah, that's something I've been working on. I can do a recheck if you like. I always seem to find little errors. Yes, I'm looking for people to do that. I'm kind of thinking I want to transcribe all the shit. And then I want to do one major editing pass. And after that, I'll be looking for people. So I'll keep you in mind, Indy. I'll send you I'll contact you, and I can send you a PDF or an EPUB, whatever you prefer. So that's another thing I'm working on. I might be working on that on stream, and I actually have some interesting stuff. I was thinking about I need some emotes, and I can't do them myself, and I wanted a new avatar. So I found this German streamer called Pewee. She's amazing, and she live streams like how she does art. So I've got some stuff commissioned from her, which should arrive in March, which would be nice. How does it work with the grant that you got? Do you have to publish the book before it's paid? You could do reading as well. Yeah, Mike, I'm going to get into contact to you as well. Yes, definitely. No, the grant was actually quite nice. It was kind of like, I set a goal and I got like 4,500 euros. And then if I finished the goal, I got 500 more. And then I just finished the goal. But they didn't want to, I just wrote a report. It was basically just the German government throwing money at people. And I've actually noticed, I've been to a lot of like theater productions, so you have like the logo. You have to push that's why the logo is in the book. You have to put the logo in. A lot of people got that grant. But that's fine. Might as well get some tax money. So I'll get in contact with you. So the artists kind of needed. Yeah, it could be worse. They kind of needed that money. I was very, very surprised that they gave this to me, seeing that this book's primarily in English. So my plan is to write this book, and I want to write a sequel as well. But I want to write this book, and then I want to record an audiobook, and then I'm going to translate it into German. At some point, if I can. So I've been listening to the Horus Heresy, which I read like a lot of the books, but I've restarted, got like an Audible sub, and I started re-listening to the Horus Heresy, and it's like, because I don't really like audiobooks that much, but I have read the books before. I kind of want to read stuff, but if I have read it before, it's kind of okay. So I'm doing that, and like the Toby Longworth is just like and then the War Master said, it's so good. Now I want to record an audiobook. Grim Deeper. Yeah. Yes. Grim Deeper. Not this time it's personal. So spoilers. This book ends very unsatisfactorily. So there's more stuff. I don't know, audiobooks, I listen to them and then I go like, what's the spell? And I want to look it up. And I'm a very OCD reader. My wife always makes fun of me because I read so slow, and I stop and then I look up things on the internet and shit like that. So audiobooks are not my preferred medium, but I get the appeal. I mean, they are nice. And I think it kind of works for me with the Horus Heresy, because I've read most of these books before, and most of them, like the first 15 or whatever. But it seems like a series that I'll never finish now, because there's so many books. So I thought if I keep going after I read all the books, there's this idea, there's this controversy why if it's reading. But if I read all the books that I've read, I'd probably keep going or whatever. And I like the way they're read. I don't know how much if it's a very dry book, like something like The Expanse, where it's like very down to earth and shit. I don't know how that would actually work as an audiobook. Maybe I have to try it at some point. But stuff like Warhammer is like it's so like, I love how British they are. Like this Toby Longworth guy who reads their probably, I don't know if I can do this, but like if you never listen to the shit, I mean Mike will know, but like if you never listen to the shit, it's so good.
A leader spear tip. The bridge of the Vengeful Spirit bustled with activity, the business of ferrying troops and war machines back from the surface of Davin complete, and plans now drawn for the extermination of Yugen Temba's rebellious forces.
The extermination.
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 That was the word they used. Not subjugation, not pacification. Extermination. And the Legion was more than ready to carry out that sentence.
I just love the I just love that how British they are. It's just, so good. So good. It's good stuff. The narrative is vital. I've had to people say this, I've had to turn books off because it's been awful. Yeah. Some great narrators. John Banks is awesome too. Yeah, I mean, the thing with the Warhammer stuff, it's just like it's so cheesy. Like it's chewing the scenery, and you really have to do that. And I enjoy that very much. Like I wouldn't want that to be too realistic, right? I like the way that he does it. We all sound like that, honestly. I wish I sounded like that. I just aspire to just. Oh my God! On the bridge of the Vengeful Spirit. I mean, it's so good. I'm reading at the same time. I'm reading Gaunt's Ghosts, the series by Dan Abnett, which I've never read, and I was like, I need to read this now because Jonathan's been reading it because of Darktide. I was like, I mean, I gotta read this now, and it's really good. But that's almost like because it's like, you know, it's inspired by Sharp's Rifles, I think, the series. And it's almost too like realistic for Warhammer. And it's like, it has to be silly, right? There's people using like bolt guns that are massive and they're shooting people in the head and it's magic and shit. Yeah, I enjoy this shit. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up now because I'm not getting this episode out today. So I'm going to have to, I don't know, backdate it to California time again. But I need to get this shit out. I need to also do some research before I can go to bed. And I have to get up early tomorrow morning because I have to bring the car to, badly need an oil change on the car. So thanks for watching. I appreciate this a lot. I'm going to try to do some TLDR. I'm going to try to do some streams and probably some book streams if I can manage. And then maybe play some Darktide at some point again. And we have to do Elden Ring. And I'll be back. I'll be back. So, I should put this away. I need this. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it a lot. And see you soon, everybody. I hope. Have a good time. I wish you good luck in all your endeavors. Unless you work for the FBI and you're spying on people. All right.